or good afternoon.
Hello, David. How are you?
I'm doing very well. It's been a
Good to hear.
while since I've seen you. Have you heard from Neil often?
I have not. In fact, I'm waiting on a call back. I called him yesterday, left a message. So,
Well, he was in Florida down by Brewster Roads for a little bit. It seems like he's making the circuit around the United States.
okay.
So I'm not sure if he's flying, driving. I don't think he's paddling because the distances are pretty long.
Yeah. I've been talking to John about the Mon.
Oh, you have?
Yeah. So right now I'm kind of laying out, if I was going to do the whole thing, where would I stop, and trying to plan that out and then build from there.
How many days does he plan on doing it?
I think right now he's having trouble getting like spawn. So like he's got a lot of people saying, oh yeah, that's a good idea, but nobody wants to take responsibility for planning or like doing the whole thing. So we've talked about that a little. I need to touch base with him again this week, hopefully. But I think maybe we need sort of an inaugural, somebody do it, or a group of people. Maybe I can get a couple of people together, and then let it build from there.
Well, I can tell you, it takes a little bit to organize a adventure floating down the river.
Right. But so I'm gonna get like his contacts, the organizations that have been excited about it, and use them hopefully to find places to at least stay. But what was I gonna say?
Well, you're doing a good job introducing yourself. That's the first item on the agenda. So, well, you know, Trish is a paddler from Pittsburgh who's working on a little bit with the Mon River.
Yeah. So I think we need to find an organization who could use it as a fundraiser kind of thing. Because any sojourn I've been on or something, it's generally an organization that's using it as a fundraiser. And it's an organization that's involved in conservation, or things like that will take ownership of a trip like that. So,
sounds great. We're going to go on and have our introductions because it's 4 o'clock and we want to take advantage of people's time here. I'm going to go around the circle, and what we're doing is any updates or neat things in your life. And you're on, Harry. Who are you?
Hi, I'm Harry Stone. I chair the River Basin Alliance, and you'll hear enough from me later, so I'll just stop right there.
How about Perry Thomas? Good to see you.
Hey all, I'm Perry Thomas. I'm the Salt River Basin Coordinator, and the Salt River Basin includes the Louisville metro area.
David Rudder.
Hi everyone, David Rudder with the Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana Regional Council of Governments. And my big thing that's coming up on a personal level is here in a few more weeks, I'm going to travel down to Florida, not as far south as you, Brewster, but I'm going to go paddle on the Withlacoochee and the Swanee River.
Wow, cool.
Wonderful places to paddle. Brewster.
I'm Brewster Rhodes with David Wicks. I'm the co-chair of the Ohio River Recreation Trail, soon to be renamed the Ohio River Way. So we just had a big meeting Friday and got tremendous energy. So we're really excited about the next period of time and the launch of our new brand in June.
Billy Bennett.
Billy Bennett with the Kentucky Environmental Education Council. This has not been a good year. In the span of 6 weeks, my wife and I have lost their mothers. So 6 weeks to the day. And so I've been a little distracted.
Our thoughts are with you, Billy. Take care of your family first.
Yeah, I will.
Vic.
Vic Elam, Refuge Manager, Ohio River Islands National Wildlife Refuge. Is there a question I need to answer?
Any neat thing going on in your life or in your work or on the Ohio River?
Got some flat projects going on. Got first person signed up for a permit to camp on refuge while through paddling this summer. That'll be going on in May. So, yeah, we got some good things going.
What a celebration. We should write that up, you know. It's called primitive camping on federal land. It's a precedent. It's good. Bridget.
Bridget Taylor, environmental scientist at Osanko. I run my monthly sampling program. So we sample every other month. So March is the coming month. So I'm excited for it to hopefully not be cold while sampling.
And we have one iPhone.
That's me, maybe? I'm on my phone. Trish Howison.
Hello,
I am on my way to Chicago right now, but
okay.
paddler from Pittsburgh. My big thing coming up is not the Ohio River, but a main tributary, the Monongahela. Hopefully working on a paddle trip the length of the Mon for maybe either sometime this summer or September for there's a climate summit in Pittsburgh in September.
Sounds great. Just wanted to share our agenda here for today. We're going to be done by an hour, but want to start off with the June National Rivers Month. Risa can't be with us, but we'll talk a little bit about this. And then we have two grant possibilities, potential projects that we're going to work with. Richard Harrison sort of asked, and he said he's going to join a discussion about how all these things can work together. And then just an announcement about the March 16th webinar. And then sort of a discussion how we have time of what does our committee do or can do for the Ecological Restoration Initiative, which is going to come out in June, and how recreation supports that. Just a quick little deal on Earth Day 2022, and then another discussion on pulling together a report for the for Orba as we're coming to a close on our 2-year project here. So with that, what I'd like to do is to jump right in there. And Harry, you said you were going to talk a little bit about the June National Rivers Month.
Yeah, and it's a brief report. So Risa and I had a conversation today about the float trips for the America's Rivers. And Richard Harrison and I had a conversation, I believe, also today. And so the approach that we have decided to take, and I've not talked to John King yet, that's next on my agenda, but to work with John King and see if he will take the lead on being the contact person for the float trips. Risa has the communication ready to go. And then we will be encouraging the float trips. We'll get them to register with us, though we will not have responsibility for the events. Those will be done at the local level. But what we will do is keep track of all the float trips that are out there, work on the marketing, I say the marketing, getting the word out, using our distribution system and others. But part of the request will be to get back photos that have permissions for us to use, which will be a great thing. So we don't just use Harry's pictures of the Cincinnati area all the time for our communications. So we finally have kind of gotten to the point of being able to move forward, and I anticipate that by the end of this week, we will get those communications out. One of the things I would say is if you know of some groups that we ought to be contacting that are likely organizations to sponsor float trips, please send me those that contact information.
So the purpose, once again, is the National Rivers Month. During the month of June, Orba is trying to have as many float trips with congressional representatives with 3 goals in mind. One is to engage them in the river and a discussion about recreation and the restoration of it. The second one is to join the Congressional Caucus, which did meet this past week and seems to be quite exciting. The other one is to have 2 pieces of support, one for the outdoor recreation bill, and then the next one is for the ecological restoration initiative that's being proposed. And so they can be floats that are just for that purpose, organized around that agenda, or they could be floats that are going on. And so Brewster and I and Ohio River Recreation Trail and River City Paddle Sports is putting together one, and just had some wonderful communication with Portsmouth folks who are organizing a big kickoff celebration. And so that's one of Brewster's jobs, to sort of engage local elected officials and hopefully representatives. Brewster, anything you have about engaging our federal representatives in floats?
Well, we'll certainly try to get as many elected officials' butts in boats and get them down the river. So I think we have a good shot to get Senator Portman to participate, and I'm working hard to get Wenstrup and Shabbat and Massey for sure. So I think we can make that happen. And then we also ought to be thinking about, while we're doing it, just inviting the state reps and state senators from the various districts that are contiguous to these waterways, because frankly, they'll enjoy the opportunity to paddle with somebody whose job they probably want to get down the pike.
So that's sort of one stretch of the Ohio River, and the challenges for this working group and for Harry and Risa is to work with all the other rivers up and down and through our basin. Any discussion about that? Any thoughts?
So what is American Rivers playing any particular role in helping to promote this effort?
Not as far as I know.
Jeez, that's crazy. All right. Just FYI, there's going to be a big announcement shortly about American Rivers and the Ohio River.
Okay.
Can you
Can't tell you anything.
Can you say anything about that?
No.
Okay.
I was sworn to secrecy, but it's all good.
Well, if there's something that Harry needs to be doing, please let me know.
Okay.
Well, maybe they'll announce that the river is still flowing and there's still water in it. It's a good thing.
It's ripping, right? Yeah.
It's ripping right now. Yeah, there's water in my backyard. It's wonderful. Well, moving on to agenda item number 2 is another Harry piece. And this has really 3 parts to it. RTCA, which is the National Park Service program, has had a call with us, and I suggested to Harry that Orba might consider applying for an RTCA technical service grant, which we were encouraged to do. There's also a Army Corps of Engineers potential project. They participated in the Ohio River Recreation Trail, or the Ohio Riverway meeting last week. They also formally approached Brewster and I to engage with them about the Ohio River Recreation Trail, and we did have one meeting to expand that a little bit. And then there is the last one with the U.S. Department of Interior. And Richard has a question about how they all work together. But Harry, maybe you could describe each one a little bit and be open for questions.
Sure. So I'll start with the one closest to home for this group, which is the communications that we had with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And the idea that David and the Corps were talking about was expanding the work that had been done by the Corps for the Ohio Riverway I'll be premature and call it that, section of the river, where they were looking at the access points, the places where the access points were too far apart, and some information about where to put in access points, that kind of thing. So that work is close to finished. I don't think you've seen the report yet, but the idea was to then take that same concept and work upriver in the Pittsburgh area, in the Mon or the Allegheny, or the other parts of the basin. So sounds like a great idea, but the issue is, to do that kind of planning assistance to states initiative, you've got to have match. And so one of the things that we talked about was, where to get that match. That's not an appropriate match for Ohio Riverway. I mean, that's a totally different part of the basin and so forth. So one of the thoughts that came up was the Appalachian Regional Commission has a substantial amount of money that they have gotten through the infrastructure bill and their normal appropriations. And they're looking for some multi-state projects that fit into their strategic priorities. And recreation, entrepreneurship, economic development is all in their wheelhouse. So what we decided to do was, in order to find match, as a way to find match for the core project, was to pursue Appalachian Regional Commission and see if they would be interested in that project. Well, while the Corps of Engineers can only do a study, Appalachian Regional Commission can do a whole lot more than that. And so we thought, and David and I talked about, instead of just asking for the match for finding access points throughout the basin, what is the breadth of stuff we would really like that we could put into that? And it would include, but not be limited to, doing those kind of access points. So David, who I think his brain has been accumulating all this stuff for a while, did his brain dump and gave me the list of all the things that we really would love to see in support.
Harry, just
Yes,
to interrupt, it wasn't my brain dump. It was, I went back through all of our meetings and identified areas that people have brought up. And by the way, I have all of them recorded. So for the past 2 years, if anybody wants to sit in front of a computer screen, feel free. I can send you the links.
So that's a great, that does explain just how comprehensive that was, because he had dumped all your brains. So that's, at any rate, everything you have suggested that would fit under this umbrella. I'm working on putting into the concept paper for this, and I'm hoping to get it done by the end of the week. It's all there. It just needs to be cleaned up and formatted, and I need to put some more language around why this is important, and are there any reasons to believe that there would be an economic impact, some of that kind of stuff. So I am working to get that put together. Hope to have that done by the end of the week. I will share it back with you all before I try to float it to Appalachian Regional Commission. And then I will take it into my contacts there. This is not an automatic thing by any stretch, but I do think that it's something that they will have an interest in. And I think that there is a reasonable probability that we would be able to attract their interest. It would have to go up the levels within the commission and be attractive to them at very high levels. And then we'll go from there. I've got another project that I'm working on with them related to river transportation. And I can tell you it's a process. It will take a little while. but that's the idea, and it would both help us get the match for doing the Corps of Engineers Planning Assistance State Initiative in other parts of the basin, as well as helping us with the other ideas that you all have brought to the fore for outdoor recreation related to the water trails and so forth. So
Hey, Harry,
that's,
can I ask, I'm sorry, when you said other parts of the basin, are you talking essentially about other parts, that is the Corps doing the study about access points throughout the entire Ohio River? Not tributaries, correct? You're talking about them doing that access point analysis beyond where they've already done it, which is in our footprint for the Ohio River Way. But you're saying that for them to do that on the rest of the Ohio, is that correct?
at least the rest of the Ohio. I think that the idea is to see just how broad we can go with, the vision and the plan is for the Ohio River and its tributaries to be an interconnected network of water trails. And
absolutely.
So we will push it as far as we can. And because we would be working with multiple Corps of Engineers districts, we might start with one as a pilot and then go to a second. I'm not sure, but we'll do as much as we can.
Well, let's open it up
I'm
for
sorry
other questions and comments, but one piece to sort of follow up on Harry's description, in addition to doing the gap analysis, built into it would be an assessment of the boat ramp and what it would take to bring it up to national standards. And so have a planning component to it. So it's more than what they just did. Richard, you look like you want to say something here.
Yeah, I think somehow, I don't know how this happened. It might have been Brewster, but somehow this landed in my court on one of these meetings that I was going to facilitate a meeting with all the core districts in the basin. And I think it's all around this. So I had asked David and Harry just if we could talk about that, just so I don't even have to be crystal clear, just glass clear. When I send out an invitation to the core district folks, I just wanted to have a discussion today to make sure we were all on the same page, or I was on the same page. And so, one thing, Brewster, you asked, and this is the Orba group meeting. Is that correct, David? We're on the Orba group, not the ORT.
Yeah, that's right. This is Basin
Okay. Okay. Because I'm on so many wonderful meetings. It's great. So for the Orba group, I think Brewster, you asked the question. I mean, one opportunity we would have would be to explore just what you were saying, Brewster. We have a couple, maybe we have 3 models in the basin. I don't know, but we have the Tennessee River line, which is a really cool project and trail system. We have the Ohio River Recreation Trail, and then we have Reese's group that's doing some great stuff on data management and just putting together GIS components for trail systems. And so one thing we could potentially ask the Corps to do with a match would be to, we did with the, if you all remember with the ORT, we did a strategic plan discussion where we had the Park Service kind of help us with that. We as part of this effort, we could potentially do some brainstorming and have a document produced. And I don't want to say the Orba plan is the be all and end all, but it could be specific for the for what we're trying to do and where we would explore some of that stuff. It is building out the rest of the ORT on the Ohio River. The first priority is connecting the Tennessee River line to us, to the OR, not us, we're all us, but the ORT. I still revert back to the ORT since I've worked a lot on that. So I do think there will be an opportunity I think the Corps will do whatever we want. So if we're looking for the Corps to tell us what to do, it'll probably never happen. And I don't mean that with disrespect. So I think it's kind of for this group to map out what we want. And we don't need to do that to set this meeting up. But I guess, David and Brewster, I'm wondering, is it this whole committee and the 4 core districts that meet to kind of map this out? What do we want to scope with the Appalachian group to fund? And like Harry mentioned, there's a couple of things we could ask for that are not part of a planning assistance to states project. It's just work that they could fund, whether it's a contractor or whatever. And so I just wanted a little feedback, or do you just want me to just set up a doodle poll and then we'll worry about all this later?
Richard, it's always good to be clear on what we're asking for, that's for sure. And maybe the document that Harry is working on now that pulls up together the sort of the needs, and maybe our challenge is not to ask for too much and ask, for the next level of stuff we need, so maybe we don't want to ask for everything right now. I still think if we had a pretty good needs assessment of every boat ramp, and then a pot of money from the American or Appalachian Regional Commission to take care of those needs, that might be a very straightforward ask. And so I think we wait for Harry's piece and he sends it around and we see if we have some consensus around our needs.
Okay.
But,
So actually, one question, David, and
just one more piece.
I'm sorry.
I think identifying all of those other water trails, you mentioned 3, but there's Parkersburg, there's Pittsburgh already has a water trail. The Great Miami has a wonderful water trail. The Muskingum River has a fascinating water trail. And really look at it. And we could even say Vic has probably the biggest water trail with the islands in the Ohio River now that you can camp on it as on federal land. So so there's lots of moving parts. You're right.
I was just going to say real briefly that the one question we have to determine is the regional Appalachian Regional Commission permitted to put money into something that is beyond their footprint? So it follows up with what you're saying, David, that maybe we only apply for funding to do the extension of this PAS gap analysis upstream, so that everything that the Corps does and that could be added on is done within the footprint of the regional Appalachian Regional Commission, which is in Ohio, at least, is Claremont County East.
Yeah, and I can give just a touch of feedback on that based on the other project we're working on. To the extent that they see it as part of a whole, they can go broader. And to the extent it is in a state that is their state, I don't think they have too much concern about it. So I think that there are portions of it, if we convince them that if we've got a network, a complete network of the Ohio River Basin, where people can come in and they can know their access points and they can see how they can get from point A to point B, and that is something that we can market, and we can raise the profile of the Ohio River Basin for canoeing and kayaking and so forth. I think that they would see that as a whole and would see the advantage of it.
Perfect.
Now, so definitely they can go outside of that, but it has to be justified by the Appalachian region.
Thank you.
One question I have, Harry, is sometimes the Corps gives an estimate of their charges. Would that be valuable to when you approach the Appalachian Regional Commission?
Yeah, I think from a process perspective, if I can clean up what you gave to me and put it into a coherent format so that it's not just a list, but it's a plan, or it's elements that go together to create a plan. If I can get that put together and then we vet it with this group, at that point, we can then talk to the Corps and say, here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to be proposing. How much of this can you do in a PAS? That's the first question. And how do we coordinate it across the basin? Do we need a separate PAS for each of the districts? Is this something that can be coordinated through a district? Do we start with a pilot in one district? How do we do that? And then with that answer, also then we say, all right, given what you say you can do and how we're going to approach it, could you give us a cost? What will it cost to do that work? So that we will then be able to take that back as part of what we're presenting to the Appalachian Regional Commission, because effectively we're bringing them money because the Corps is supplying the other half of that. So that would be the approach that I would want to take.
Sounds great. Any other discussion? Any other thoughts on this? We want to move along because we have a couple other items on the agenda.
So I'll stand down until I hear from you all. How about that? I won't send an email to the Corps until I hear from you guys. I just want to make sure I'm not holding things up. Perfect.
Just to let you know, Richard, it was Risa who suggested you and you volunteered, not Brewster.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay. The next item is sort of a similar discussion, and maybe it really supports the Ecological Restoration Initiative. At our last meeting, RTCA folks were online with us and had a discussion and an invitation to submit a letter to the Assistant Secretary about ecological restoration. And the discussion is really how does recreation support that? But at the same time, if Harry or anybody else could give sort of an overview of what's potential in a short little piece.
So where we are with that, we have been focused on as one of the areas where there is a gap is in the ecological restoration area. And as I'm sure you have heard more than you want to hear, the Great Lakes has gotten $3.5 billion with a B dollars over the last decade or so. And we had a call with the Congressional Caucus this last week, and Senator Portman actually had some folks on the line as well. And it was the day that Senator Portman had announced that the infrastructure bill had another $1 billion in it for ecological restoration for the Great Lakes. Well, that's all good. We're very happy for that. But there are 15 places across the nation that have in the infrastructure bill tens of billions to the $1 billion for ecological restoration, and the Ohio River Basin has none and has never had any over that 10 years that there has been ecological restoration funding. So that's the gap that we're trying to fill. But in historically, the funding for ecological restoration came through the US EPA. However, there are now a number of locations that are getting their ecological restoration funding, again, at the tens of billions dollars kind of levels, through the Department of Interior. But within the infrastructure bill, Stefan Nofeld, who is the person at RTCA that David had us connected with, he made the point that there is a section in the infrastructure bill that has, I believe it's $200 million for Ecological Restoration, and it does not have anybody's name on it. So he had been pushing inside of Interior for some of that to be moved into the direction of the Ohio River Basin. And he recommended that we do a letter to the Assistant Secretary of Fish and Wildlife and Parks to introduce ourselves, introduce the plan for the Ohio River Basin, and make it clear why that funding that, you know, we've already got the plan in place, the needs being documented. And so this is a place where you ought to put some of that money. So I have drafted a letter. It's in internal review in Orba, and I checked with Mr. Nofeld, and he was able to give us comments on that letter without any kind of a problem. And so he has a copy of that letter to help us figure out how to strengthen it. So that's where that is at the moment. I'm seeing a question there from Brewster.
Just quickly, Harry, with the Everglades Restoration Project and with Great Lakes, and I'm sure others, there are very specific projects, each of which have a particular unique price tag, right? Do we have projects that are like that we've already identified and have some general sense of what it will cost to do?
That is the work that the National Wildlife Federation, along with Orsanco, have and others, but them taking the lead, are diligently working on. It will be in roughly the June timeframe when that will be completely ready. So no, it isn't quite there. Yes, we could give ballpark figures today, and before they're ready to give away money, we would have those numbers available for them, at least out for public comment.
Yeah. And just final comment, I think it's critical politically for all of us to be able to spit back when asked by Portman staff or Brown's office or whatever, what is it you guys are talking about? I don't get it. They get it about the projects in Lake Erie, but I couldn't tell you myself specifically what it is that is a project that might cost $5 million or $10 million in the Ohio River Basin. I'm just dumb. That's all. So you guys just tell me, and I can be an advocate, of course, for it. But I think we need to school all of ourselves up so that when that list comes out, there's a briefing for us internally, so we all can are articulate enough to be able to share the message about what kinds of projects specifically they are.
Makes total sense. You know, we have a $128 million plan for Beargrass Creek in John Yarmouth's district. So it would be great to have 128 million to restore Beargrass.
Perfect.
And I imagine
that's a great example.
I imagine that there's probably 50 projects like that, you know, and I don't know the granularity that Jordan's working on, but there's great. Any other discussion, any other things, you know, and this goes down to one of the other items on this is, what can recreation do to support the ecological restoration initiative? You know, do we need to write a white paper on the value of recreation and being dependent upon healthy, clean environment? Not everybody likes to paddle in polluted Beargrass Creek like me. You know, some people like clean water. So I just wanted to throw that out. Vic, we haven't heard much from you. What, you know, how does one justify the use of recreation to support ecological restoration?
Well, that's a good question. I think, you know, there's a lot of information out there. I think my agency has a lot of information put together on the value of tourism dollars and things like that. And that certainly kind of comes back to quality of the environment that people are utilizing that generates that money. But, you know, I can't really put my finger on really specifics on that, David, just right off.
If there is some sort of document in Fish and Wildlife land that could help us, you know, they aren't looking for a 20-page or 100-page deal, you know, they're looking for the nuggets. Perry, you turned your picture on. Any thoughts on how one uses recreation to justify the expense of ecological restoration?
Well, I have a couple, but I also noticed David turned off his mute. Right, you're unmuted, David. Did you have something?
Well, I was just gonna, David, reconfirm a big part of it is that economic impact of recreation, and it doesn't happen if the waters aren't clean, if there aren't places to do that. I mean, it's almost more the other way around in that the ecological restoration supports the recreation component of it, but certainly the more people that are out there recreating on it, the more concern and care that people have about that resource, and putting pressure on their elected officials to say, let's do something about it, getting after doing those projects. But and that recreation piece, so that not just us paddlers, but fishing, and fishing, bird watching, photography. There's also that health component of it, of getting out into nature, that tie-in of connection to a healthy person, a healthy outlook on life, as well as clean water. We all need clean water for everything that we're doing, business, industry, and we're only going to have that clean water if we have the ecological system maintained that can help to keep that water clean. And going back in terms of that funding and projects that we need it, I mean, the Ohio River Basin, a big part of what we've been talking about is nutrients. And so there's a big need for that support for agricultural restoration of, and that's that ecological impact. I know we're getting away from recreation within that, but that's restoring wetlands, we're putting buffers along our waterways that are within the basin that helps to protect the Ohio River Basin as a whole, as well as the Mississippi and the Gulf of Mexico.
So,
And David, maybe we're not getting away from recreation when you talk about nutrients, because the 2015 and the 2019 algal bloom were all recreation advisories. And you talk about the Ironman competition and just everything that's supported by that. So, at Brewster, to your point, we're working with the group to develop a strategy to develop planning functions for non-point runoff, and the Ohio River Basin is the biggest contributor to the Gulf hypoxia zone, which is kind of a secondary challenge, but that same runoff is in the rivers and lakes that we are all enjoying, and you're not going to be able to recreate effectively on these bodies of water if from April to October you have to have caution. And I guess I need a life, but I watch a lot of blue catfish YouTube videos on the Tennessee River, and it just makes me cringe every time. And in the Ohio River, every time those folks talk about eating the fish, they say, well, all you got to throw them back, they're all contaminated. And so, I mean, the list goes on and on. There's plenty to talk about.
Trish, I think you had a thought, and then I've got a comment, but I want your thought.
I'll just quick chime in because I was prompted earlier. I just say most of what I had thought about has already been mentioned by others, but I'm hearing a positive feedback loop, right? That recreation prompts an affection for our waterways. Some of you know that I'm right now sitting at a demonstration farm for the Wendell Berry farming program, right, where we teach about sustainable forestry and sustainable farming and the ways of keeping nutrients on the land. And one of Wendell's famous quotes is that it all turns on affection. It's all about having an affection for those waterways and then caring about managing them, right? So I hope that somehow that positive feedback loop of having affection for the waterways and then caring for them gets into our messaging as we prepare talking points for the powers that be.
So just to touch on, and these don't give you your numbers, Brewster, but any one of these has big numbers. But the elements that will be in the plan include helping communities most impacted by pollution. There'll be a environmental injustice look at things to see what areas need that kind of help. Restoring fish and wildlife habitat, cleaning up toxic pollution, and just in acid mine drainage, which is unique to our region, there's a $5 billion shortfall in Pennsylvania and what was in the infrastructure bill. So there's $5 billion right there if you're looking for a number. They've bolstering the drinking water, stormwater, and wastewater infrastructure, and included in that is septic systems, and then reducing non-point source pollution. And so that's a lot about agriculture and CREP programs and ways to help farmers keep the nutrients on the ground while also helping farmers to be competitive and make money. Restoring the hydrology and ecosystem functions, preventing and managing invasive species. And we've been talking a lot about the carp issue, but that ain't the only issue we've got. I mean, hydrilla, and I mean, I've got a whole book here sitting right in front of me of aquatic invasives in Ohio. We've got confronting climate change, and good news there. At the Orsenko meeting, Jim Knoll with the National Weather Service, who does the river flood predictions and all that stuff. He has taken a look at the study that was done for the climate impacts in the Ohio River Basin and the adaptation strategy that came out in 2017. He's looked at the latest models and he said it does not change anything. It's all very, very similar in our basin. So that's information we can continue to use. And then supporting strategic decision-making through research and adaptive management, engaging the public in our communities, and supporting a regional restoration economy.
So the question comes in, what should this recreation committee do to help that initiative? Is it a 2-page deal? Is it a couple of timely newspaper or magazine articles? Several of us have contacts with people. Can we, over the next 4 months, create or find someone to write a piece up in Cincinnati or someplace on the role of recreation and ecological restoration? You know, that's our challenge, not to be answered today. If anybody has any ideas or thoughts, it's an ongoing piece, and I think a very important one for Orba.
And the thing that would be most helpful to me is to fill in my ignorance. I need to know about those studies that are out there that show that connection between outdoor recreation and our well-being, our economy. So any of those kinds of studies, I can make the link back to the environment nicely, but any of those kind of studies that connect numbers and health and that kind of thing, I would be grateful for them.
Sounds great. And hopefully the folks down at the University of Tennessee at their Tennessee Riverline Conference did a very nice sort of economic impact of recreation on the Tennessee River. They also included health. They included social value and social community, as well as economic impact. And so between them and the folks at University of Cincinnati and Chris, I think there's more than our fair share of reports. Anything else for the good of the order around these pieces? Richard, not to pick on you again, but is there any other discussion about how these relate together that we should have?
Not from my end.
Okay. Sounds great. Our next topic on the agenda, just quickly, we have sort of several updates. Let's see if I can find one of them here. Here's a little screenshot for working with Chris Lawrence, and we have 5 historic lock houses. It's our next webinar on March 16th. We'll see if we can sort of zoom in a little bit, but we've had several meetings about it. We've decided instead of putting people's pictures, we put their lock house. And so we have 5 nice folks that are working with that. It's on March 16th, 12 noon. If anybody has any thoughts or questions about promoting that, certainly let me know. It's an exciting piece for me. Harry, looks
David,
like you want to say something.
David, that format does not work well in Facebook. And so if there's any way that I could get something that is in a square format, that would be really helpful. If not, if you could send it in to me in something other than PDF so I could take it apart and put it back together. I did try to do an advertising promotion this last time. I don't think it did a lot.
Harry,
yes.
Nick is a very talented guy there at Orsenko, and I'm sure with a simple request, he turns around stuff very effectively. He's a good guy.
Perfect. So he's the one that's doing it.
He's the creator of it. So Jen sort of is chair. I'm sort of a person who pushes it. Harry has been MC on several of them, and Orsenko does everything else. It's wonderful. It's a great relationship. Many thanks to you, Richard, to encouraging Nick to do all of that.
Yep, he is incorrigible.
The next piece is just a short discussion on Earth Day. And this is an Earth Day poster that we're doing here in Louisville with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers at the Falls of the Ohio National Wildlife Refuge and cleaning up Sand Island. We have a whole crew of folks, maybe 10 different organizations that surround the falls, going to participate in a day. And we got the Corps to be a spokesperson, and they're going to give a talk on the value of wildlife and how the Corps respects it more than barges. And we'll see it. The interesting piece is the poster that we've created is on invasive species posters. So we went out over the past year and collected invasive species from the islands out there on the Ohio River. And the U of L School of Fine Arts have taken it and produced a paper out of it. And so our little posters, some of our posters are going to be on invasive species harvested from there. And so it's our little dream to do that. And I'll share that with everybody down the road. But are there other Earth Day initiatives going around that we might in some way, shape, or form promote? And maybe I'm just a big Earth Day guy. I'm a Earth Day celebratory person. Well, if anybody wants to come on down and listen to the Corps talk and help clean up, we'll have, believe it or not, 10 Voyager canoes paddling up to the island. So we have room for about 120 people. Kentucky Fish and Wildlife just put together a beautiful $1 million boat ramp in Shawnee Park in the middle of our west end. And we're going to paddle from there up to the islands, get out, have a little cleanup, listen to the Corps and all of our sponsors, and then paddle on back down. Nice Earth Day deal. And then the last item on the agenda that I have here is a recreation report for Orba. We have a 2-year contract or agreement with Orba to do this recreation working group, as with all the other working groups. That's coming to a close at the end of this spring, sort of early summer. And so one of the pieces that we have to do is sort of a summary of all of our work to date and our recommendations for going forward. And that's in part of this RTCA program of what Orba might do in the next little bit of time. But I wanted to put it out there that I'm looking for any assistance in helping think through what we've accomplished over the past 2 years and sort of put a combination lessons learned and projects to continue on. Because we did not do everything in our Orba plan. In the Ohio River Basin Plan, we cherry picked several projects. So Harry, not to pick on you again, but any direction for, a 2-page, whatever summary of what we're doing? And
well, I had suggested or had offered, and you may not have heard my offer, to do a first cut, not at where you should go in the future, but just taking from the reports you've already done, just extract from that what you have accomplished, and do a first cut coming from my hand, and then you can fix it. You can make it as good as you want to, but I would rather have you all working on what you're working on than working on the report. So I certainly want your input on where we go in the future. And I want you to fix what I'm doing, but I will take a first cut at it as soon as I get past about 14 other things that are on my plate. I have started.
Sounds great. I take you up on it. We're 4 minutes early. I just wanted to see if there was anything else for the good of the order. Brewster and I, as Brewster mentioned earlier, we had a very nice meeting, a full capacity, standing room only, for the last Ohio River Way meeting, where we announced our June trip. Not only are we going to have a rollout of this, but if anybody is interested in paddling with us from Portsmouth on down to Louisville, Kentucky, 10 days, visiting 10 beautiful river towns, probably actually 20. We'll stop and have lunch. And Brewster is the onshore logistics guy. I'm the on-water person. So all of you are welcome. Mr. Rudder participated last time. Hopefully you're going to come again for part of it or all of it. And unfortunately, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has put a cap on the number of people that can camp on an island. So at one night, so we might not be able to take advantage of Manchester because we don't want to break those federal rules that we want to celebrate. So we'll just stop and get out and take a walk around on Manchester 1 or 2.
There's 2 islands.
There's 2 islands, so we could have 8, but we might have 20. Brewster is out and about to recruit folks. It's wonderful. We have a crew from Louisville for sure, and the theme is going to be art, writers, and reporters. And so that's our goal, is to stack the boat with artists, writers, and reporters, as well as naturalists and river enthusiasts. So, but we want to really focus in on getting our literary folks on the river. Thank you very much. It's we're 1 minute early. Let the record begin, unless if there's anything else for the good of the order. Maybe we could go on around. Billy, you've been very quiet. Anything else? Anything for the good of the order, Billy?
No, I can't think of anything right now, but I will say that were you talking about Nick Callahan the other day? I mean, a
We
while
were
ago.
talking about Nick Callahan the other day.
Yeah, he's one of our EEL Corps members, right? So he did 2 years of service with us. He's a great guy.
Well, you know, it's a wonderful program, that whole AmeriCorps deal. Bridget, anything else? And anything you want to chime in on?
No, I don't have anything else.
Well, and how about Trish? She spoke in the beginning and we're quiet. If there's anything we can do to help them on, let us know.
I will. Thank you, David. And I'll join you. I'll send you an email, but I'd like to maybe join the trip in June.
Well, you'd be welcome. It's always a pleasure. And you could be in one of the big canoes or in your own boat. So we'll figure it out.
You all have the dates for that?
May 31st to June 9th. And leaving Portsmouth May 31st. We have a whole application and schedule and wonderful restaurants each night and catered food. And so it's going to be a smooth, easy trip because Brewster's going to handle everything on shore. It's going to be like a livery service, you know, valet service. We'll paddle on up and have a little red carpet into town and meet with the congressman and mayor and Brewster's energy.
And I'll miss not paddling. Oh my God. All right, we'll figure it out.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the good meeting. And once again, any ideas about, you know, the link between recreation and good feeling, send to Harry. He's an academic. He likes to do this research stuff, really. Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care.
Take care. Good job. Bye-bye.